who turns up. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome Christian to the stage for his wonderful lectures on no code, low code. Hey, Christian.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Excited or what?
Yeah, yeah, always for International Women's Day. And it's always fun during a pandemic.
Right? Yeah. Lots of
So,
crazy stuff happening, right?
yeah, yeah. People slapping each other at the Oscars and stuff. Crazy.
I know, I saw that. That was interesting. I have a lot of questions. Um,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
follow that soap opera. I'll tell you that.
yeah, yeah. I was like, man, it's like something else to talk about.
We need
Yeah,
new
yeah.
headlines, right, in the news. If not,
We
it's only
need
bad
more
news.
headlines. So the good thing is, on a positive note, we're here to support our women entrepreneurs today. Thanks everyone, and we will go ahead and get started with Christian talking about his no code low code solution, and then we have uh, gosh, my brain, and then we have a couple other pitches and our keynote from Anna as well. So looking forward to all this today, and we'll get started. So take it away, Christian.
Oh, give me just 1 second
Okay.
because I'm trying to do a screen share, and right now my computer is telling me that I need to give Google new computer, so that happens.
Oh,
I may have to jump right back in. There we
okay.
go. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I appreciate everyone. So last time I did a presentation, the shared screen didn't work, so that was really fun. I got to freestyle my presentation without a deck, but that's okay. We're entrepreneurs. This is what we're used to doing all day long. So I'm going to start off by actually, if I can find the correct tab here, to share a couple of things that we've built ourselves, just to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the things that are possible. And I think that usually helps people um, understand how this can be powerful for them, because in the end of the day, I always try to relate the things I talk about with actionable things that people can actually uh, use, because if not, it's just a bunch of theory, and I think we have plenty of that in our lives. Now, unfortunately, I won't be able to share that, but there's several platforms that we've built. Let me see, can you see the deck at least?
Yes, it's coming up.
Okay, that works then, right?
Perfect. You got it.
Excellent. So yeah, I'll tell a little bit more about myself. I think I'll just follow the slide deck, and I'll be talking about some of the platforms that we've built internally. But yeah, we've put on these presentations for lots of amazing different institutions, and it's always been such a pleasure. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, just so you can get a bit of the gist of things, and then I'm going to bring you down a bit of a storyline, explaining a little bit this awesome thing called no code, how it's useful, why it's useful, and how it's kind of changing the way that we're building products, as well as entrepreneurship, the future of work, and education as well. I know that's a loaded sentence, but I'll unpack all of that as we continue this presentation. So first of all, who's this dude talking to me? Why should I care? My name's Christian Peverelli, and I'm very international, born in Switzerland, from an Argentine mother, so half Latino, half from Switzerland. And I've been building startups for about 15 years. I built 3 startups, raised money for 2 of those, had 1 exit. And I was also, for 3 years, the head of Startup Boost LA, the director of Startup Boost LA, which is a Los Angeles-based accelerator, where we trained more than 100 entrepreneurs who went on to raise more than now $50 million and got into Y Combinator, Techstars, 500 startups, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really a program where every 6 months we would select, out of about 400 applicants, we would select 8 teams that we'd train. And after that 6-week period, we'd put them on stage at Google, and they would pitch in front of about 100 to 150 investors. So it was always really fun of an experience. But I always kind of had the regret that it was very limited, the number of teams that we were training. So I trained founders like Frank. His company's BuildLane. He raised $300,000 after the program. Others like Michael, he went on to raise $700,000, and now he just raised $4 million from Bombfire and Riot Ventures. And also Chris, for example, the CEO of Audio Cardio, a really cool app that allows you to listen to music and improve your hearing. So he raised $500,000 after the program. So as you can see, mainly focused on the early stage. So sort of going from idea to generating revenue and then raising capital. Through that period of time, I actually went through about 1,200 applications. And I realized that there was a huge problem when it came to people who didn't know how to program, non-technical people. They ended up just wasting a lot of money, usually spending several years of their life, and saw very little progress. And that's the point at which I just realized, like, everyone is in the game of selecting the cream of the crop and helping them from there, but very few people are really helping people from the ground up. And so that's where I built WeAreNoCode. So we're essentially an institute, an online school for non-technical entrepreneurs, and we train founders, teach them how to go from sort of an idea to building a first product to making money from that product, and then sort of figuring out which next step they want to take. So you can consider us the mix between a startup accelerator, where we teach people how to build companies, and also a product school where people learn how to build products. Now, we've trained more than 400 now startups around the world. Founders like Heidi, she joined us with just an idea. She had no technical skills whatsoever, first-time founder. She went from idea to $21,000 in monthly recurring revenue. She actually just got into Techstars LA right now. She's landed in LA a couple days ago, and she's raised $200,000 as well. We also trained David and his team from Crutify. They built their product in 10 days and got 2,000 users over the next 3 months. And he actually won first place at a pitch competition here in LA called .LA's pitch event. And we also helped other profiles like Gavin go from idea to revenue in only 8 weeks. And so he was a situation where, he wanted to digitalize his business. So he had a t-shirt printing business, and he really wanted to become a software platform. And so he was able to do that in only 8 weeks. And so that's really what I love. And we have plenty of students. But all of it kind of starts with this quote here, which is that every business is a software business. It comes from Mark Andreessen, who's one of the leading investors in Silicon Valley. Andreessen Horowitz is the name of his firm. And what he really points towards is that it doesn't matter whether you're building software or you're selling wood. You need to build some kind of a platform. You need to distribute that online. There are digital skills required. And for many people, they simply just don't have the skills to be able to do these kind of things. Now, I know we're talking at a developers, with developers often, and I'm sure many of you know how to code in this room. But developers or programmers only really represent 1/3 of 1% of the world. And so it's kind of brings up this big problem, which is what I call the non-technical dilemma, right? The investment scene essentially matured dramatically over the past 15 years that I've been building companies. So back in 2005, I was raising money with a pitch deck, a good idea, and maybe a co-founder. And now you just absolutely need to have revenue to be considered for funding. In fact, a graph that was created, it was a study done by Wing Capital, where they looked at 5,700 deals, and they realized that deals are just increasingly going towards startups with revenue. So it kind of leaves the problem of, like, if you're non-technical, how do you go about building that out? Like, if you can't get investors, most of us don't have a bunch of money to throw around. And these days, about 85% of all deals are going towards companies that generate revenue. So how do you go from idea to testing the market to building an MVP to generating first dollars in revenue if you don't have experience and you don't have technical skills? And that's really where we find ourselves at this weird cross section for those of us who are not technical. So there's hire developers is one of the options. There is find cheap developers, which is another option. We could also go and find a technical co-founder, or we could learn how to code. I'm going to break down each one of these relatively quickly, but none of them are really great options, right? When it comes to hiring developers, it's just expensive, right? So these are a couple of sort of stats that I got from the internet. It usually costs between anywhere from $30,000 to a couple $100,000 to build an MVP or an app or a complex platform or a website. So in many cases, people just don't have that kind of money to put up front. And even if they do, it's probably a bad idea, simply because the main reason why people are actually not building businesses when they build software is because there's a difference between what you believe people need and what the market actually needs once we, once the pen hits the paper or the rubber hits the road, right? And we ask to charge for it, and suddenly, oh, I was happy using it, but maybe I'm not willing to charge. We always have to change the first products and be very flexible in the way we build products early on so we can reach that awesome thing called product market fit. So first of all, hiring developers, not a great idea early on. It doesn't mean that if you are a developer, it's not a good idea to build this way, but I'll tell you how there's an even better way of going about it. Then there's hiring cheap developers. Now, this is one of the best quotes. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do the job, wait until you hire an amateur. And I think we can all relate to that. But essentially, what I've found is many times when people go overseas to get cheaper developers, let's say $5,000 from an MVP, this is what it ends up being. We call it spaghetti code. Ends up just being built very complex and unnecessarily complex, and it's usually very buggy. And then and this is often what happens, is that a lot of back and forth, not satisfied with the product, then we simply say, send me the code, or send me the source code. I'm just going to move this to someone else. And once someone who's a professional looks at it, realizes that it's pretty much unusable. So that's kind of the problem that I've seen. And I wish this wasn't the case. But honestly, seeing, many applications, and having gone through the process of hiring developers myself, managing developers, trying to learn how to code, all these different things, I can tell you that this is just, by sheer numbers, this is usually not a good option. And then there's looking for a co-founder. So here, I usually make a joke that it's very unlikely that you're going to go to a networking event and meet the perfect person to partner with for the next several years, because we're literally looking for criteria, which is, does this person have the skills I need to build this platform? Does this person share the same vision and mission that I do professionally, right? Is this a person that I also have affinity with, I can easily work with for the next 3 to 5 years? Is this a person who's willing to sacrifice his or her high-paying job? Because let's be frank, if you know how to code, you could be making $100,000 to $200,000 easily in some of the larger companies. And so going out to networking events, trying to find a co-founder is kind of comparable to going to a bar trying to find a soulmate. It's possible, it's just very unlikely. And so I often say that this just ends up being a huge waste of time. Now, learning how to code, pretty simple to explain. This is the face of me trying to learn how to code. It usually takes quite a long time to become good. And then it's frustrating because you only build small parts of a solution. So oftentimes it's not really good if you're looking to build an entire product, right? So the conclusion here is that most entrepreneurs, they just end up, as I mentioned, wasting a lot of time, missing out on opportunities, and oftentimes giving up on entrepreneurship. And that's probably the saddest thing for me, because I'm a big believer that entrepreneurship's a learned skill. We also see this other category of people who essentially just never really take action. So, they talk about their ideas and think about them way more than actually trying to build them. And so this is a category that probably is the majority of people. They either think, they have many misconceptions. And some of those are as simple as, I need to be technical, right, to build my startup. That's no longer the case. I need to leave my 9 to 5. This is a big one. People think that they either have to be all in or just not even start. And that's, I think, one big misconception, which is holding people back from getting started. Then I need investors or a lot of money, another big myth. And that's used to be the case in the old world, but now there's this awesome new way of building startups. And I'm excited to be here to be able to present that to you. So it's called no code. And essentially the best way to explain this, just for those of you who've never encountered this word, this term, we have to talk about the evolution of programming. So back in the day, we had these massive computers the size of an apartment building. We would feed them with punch cards that had ones and zeros on them. And that allowed us to essentially tell computers what we wanted them to do. That's, computers only digest ones and zeros. So over time, and as computing power got better, we invented a language to communicate those ones and zeros to the computer without having to insert these cards, right? And so when we talk about no code, it's also called visual programming. It really is just an extra layer of abstraction from the ones and zeros, meaning that these are visual interfaces that allow you to build software, Some people like thinking of it like building blocks. Others like thinking of it like designing in PowerPoint and then giving some logic to that design, like we would do in sort of an Excel sheet, where it's like, if this happens, I want that to happen, right? Which is a typical scenario that we would see. So here, what's awesome about this is that you don't have to learn how to program, and you don't have to understand programming language to be able to build software. So take it a couple steps back. We saw some traces of this back in the day, even back in Dreamweaver days. Over time, we started seeing platforms like WordPress and Drupal come up. And in 2010, we had some of the really first no-code tools, right? You could do a lot of things without coding. So now the frustration here was that it was very templated, and you could only really build landing pages, websites, and maybe an e-commerce store or an online store. And this new sort of generation of tools, these no-code tools, this is a term that really came up in probably 2017. And it's a term that really refers to a whole new set of tools that allow you to do way more complex building of software, automating systems, and all that without understanding how to code, literally just visual interfaces. So now there are an overwhelming number of platforms that call themselves no-code. And I want to go a little bit into how these tools actually work, just so you can get a better understanding. Essentially, when it comes to designing, you used to just do everything in a console. You write the individual lines of code. It'd be a programmer or a coder doing this, and then you would have it reflect in the design. With these drag and drop no-code tools, it's really that. It's visual, it's drag and drop. You can grab pre-existing components. It makes it way easier to build the visual aspect, like you'd be doing in PowerPoint. And then with the logic, instead of doing that, again, in a console, we're talking about having it all in plain English. So essentially creating workflows where, if something happens, so for example, if someone clicks on this button, I want that person to be redirected to this specific page. I want an email to be sent out to their email address with a welcome email, and I would like to create a profile for them. And so this is really changing the way that people are building software, and people are building incredible things. I mean, you can build products like Lyft, like apps like Lyft, Uber, Tinder, WhatsApp, where the features could be messaging, geolocation, real-time tracking. You could have others like marketplaces where there's buyers and sellers, and you're the in-between platform that takes commission, like Airbnb, Upwork, Amazon, Indiegogo. Features, profiles, listings, splitting payments, for example. So if you were Airbnb, you would want to take in a payment from an end customer, split that payment into your commission and the host's commission, and you would essentially just send that money out. You can also build things like social networks, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter has been completely cloned in no-code, along with a lot of other platforms as well. So here, messaging, notifications, content like images, videos, all of those. And then all sorts of other platforms, whether they be internal tools or like platforms like Netflix or platforms like Salesforce, like a CRM, or Pipedrive, or even Slack, Eventbrite, and even Zoom has been cloned with no-code. So the way that it works when we talk about building more complex solutions is that you're going to essentially build out your entire stack, so your entire app. So the login, the payments, the database, user management, the logic of what happens within that, notifications, et cetera, all in no-code. And then let's say that you want to go crazy, right? You need a machine learning algorithm. Well, you can actually just create that, an AI model, for example. You could also tap into data sources. So if you want to bring in traffic information in real time, or you wanted to bring in weather information in real time that would dynamically change, so it would reflect in your app the way that it changes when the weather changes, right? You can actually, and there's plenty of other algorithms and plenty of APIs that have been created by Amazon, Google, lots of awesome technology that you can leverage. And then you can simply connect it in. So bring that feature back in, or that deeper technology back in, connecting it with no-code. So it's really impressive what's possible. And I think a lot of people who have reservations about no-code have not dug in the past 2 years. Now, what are the benefits specifically for people like you looking to build a business? This is a graph that was created by Forward Partners. So they're a VC firm based in London. And they essentially said that, the new model is building with no code, old model is building startups with coding. And they compare it as simply as this. So the time to build that app or first minimum viable product, the MVP, usually it used to take about a year. Now it takes about 6 weeks with no code. When it comes to the cost, it used to cost about 50 grand. And now we're talking about being able to just build it for less than $1,000 yourself. When it comes to a team, you used to need a whole team of people, right? You needed a back-end engineer, you needed a front-end engineer or developer or coder. I use those interchangeably. You needed a product manager, probably someone in charge of UI, UX. And now we're talking about one person being able to do all those jobs in one. So, and obviously, not to mention the one where it's the capabilities, right? You used to need to be technical, and now you can be non-technical. So it's no surprise that you have investors like Jason Calacanis who have quotes like this saying that startups being able to get to year 2 with $250,000 in revenue without ever having a developer is the greatest unlock I can think of right now for our economy and for entrepreneurship. And so, I wanted to showcase a couple of real world examples, and we'll go a little bit more in depth here. So this is a platform called Scribbly.io. It was built by Danny. Now, she literally was just burnt out of work, and she decided, you know what, I want to start a business. Or she left. She literally didn't know she wanted to start a business when she left her job. And within 8 weeks, she picked up a no-code tool, built the first platform. So this does content marketing. And she was able to scale that to $20,000 a month in 12 months. She's now at about $30,000 a month, and she's built everything with the tools that you can see below here. We also have a great example of Nadim. So Nadim, non-technical, built a platform called Nuage Stay, which is basically a luxury Airbnb. And he scaled that with no-code tools from about $100,000 in annual revenue to $5 million with these no-code tools. And he did it, no investors involved, no funding at all. And then we also have Charles. So Charles, again, similar story, but he went from $0 to $500,000 with building his entire platform called Comet with no-code tools, and has raised more than $13 million. And this is not just an exception to the rule. We have a lot of different entrepreneurs building their startups with no code who are raising money from investors. It's a very serious endeavor, and this is really transforming entrepreneurship. So oftentimes we get this question, can your software be built with no code? The answer is most likely yes. But then we come up with this big however, and this is something that I'm really bullish on, which is that building is just not enough. The reason for that is because 90% of all the apps in the App Store are zombie apps. They haven't been opened in the past 30 days. Most people are building things that no one needs, that no one cares. In fact, the fact that no one needs it is the number one reason why startups fail. So the biggest problem that people do is that they, in their head, they say, hey, I need to build this, I have this idea, I need to build this thing, I'm non-technical, I hire someone to do it, I bring it to market and expect everyone to flood towards it. And it's a much more complicated strategy. So this idea of build it and they will come is a myth. And this is an awesome quote from Steve Blank, who says, build and they will come is not a strategy, it's a prayer. And I cannot tell you how many founders build their software, bring it to market, and then have to unbuild, rebuild forever. And that's just not the best approach. So a product is not a startup. A product is not a business. You need to figure out all these other things. As an entrepreneur, if you think that just building your product is going to get you to the place where you're able to launch your business successfully, you are really mistaken. And by the way, this is with or without code. Like, there's no differentiator. These are still the biggest problems. So it's very important for entrepreneurs to understand and to take a holistic approach to building startups, where they realize they have to learn, what the customer actually wants, what business model is the best to employ. You need to learn things around pricing. You need to learn about sales. You need to learn about marketing. You need to learn about partnerships. If you're going to fundraise, you need to learn about fundraising. If you're going to build a team, which is usually the case, you're going to want to do that as well and learn how to do it correctly. And this is now why I want to bring you through the step-by-step of how to build your startup as a non-techie. And I'll be very quick here. It's really just showing you the framework. It's really 6 relatively simple steps. Now, the first step in the process is to just set your hypotheses. Like, there's really high risk hypotheses in everything that you are building early stage, because it's just what you believe and what other people you've spoken about your product to believe, right? Now, hypotheses like high risk hypotheses, let's take an example. Airbnb, one of their big hypotheses was that people will be willing to rent out their houses to random people online. So we all know that that is the case, and they were able to prove that right. But if they hadn't been able to prove that right, Airbnb as it exists today would be totally different. So that's what I talk about when I talk about setting your hypotheses. Like, what are the high risk hypotheses behind your product? And let's put those to the test. Step 2 is going to be, okay, that's pretty much just clarifying what we think. Now let's understand what the customers say that they want, right? So this is a process that most people know about. Most people get totally wrong. They go in there and start talking about their product to people, and then people start giving them the mom treatment, which is, that's great, honey. I love it. Keep going. And that's not useful for us as entrepreneurs, right? We need to understand the harsh truth. So we need to talk to these individuals who we believe would be ideal customers for us. And instead of talking about our product or pitching or anything, we really want to understand what their life looks like within the context of the place we think we could help with this product idea that we have, right? So holding these events, setting up these one-on-one chats, and figuring out what people say that they want. But of course, we all know we are human, and there's a huge difference between what we say and what we do. So the next step is to actually build out a market test. So what is this? And by the way, we're going to do this entire step with no code, whether we know how to program or not. It's just way quicker with no code. So if you're a programmer, you absolutely should be learning no code tools as well. Now, in this step, what we're doing is we are going to set up an experiment. If I had built out this entire app, if I had built out this entire platform, would I be able to get people to take an action online that, would transform this into a business? If the answer is no, well, you probably don't want to build yet. If the answer is yes, great, let's go ahead and build that out. But this really comes down to being able to express the value proposition that your product delivers to an end customer in a very concise way through a landing page or kind of a 2-page website, where we're going to target the closest call to action, so a button basically, that will target validating your business model or validating demand behind this, right? So in the case where you have an app, it's maybe a fake download button. In the case where you have let's say an online program, maybe we could have a pre-sale button. We could also have a free consultation, take a product demo, this, that, the other. And really what we want to do is create elements to be able to build this out. And we'll talk about that separately. But we want to build this and bring it to market, attach tracking and analytics to understand how people are using it and see if we're able to sell what we're about to build. And this might seem counterintuitive. How do I go out there and sell if I haven't built it? This is just the nature of early stage entrepreneurship. It's the nature of the biggest difference between building startups and having a job, right? And so it is counterintuitive. And so there are a lot of things that you will want to get familiar with before you start making all the same mistakes that literally the past 50 years of entrepreneurs have been doing in Silicon Valley. There's a lot to be learned. You should not expect to know it all. So we're going to create this test, go out there and start selling. And then we're going to get a perfect idea of what people are willing to buy, and usually a pipeline of people willing to buy it. At that point, amazing. We're going to build out our first MVP, all leveraging no code. And we're essentially going to go ahead and then put it in the hands of the end customers, and we have a business. Now, when we're building an MVP, we want to literally target the value, not create the features that we have in our mind. So you have to think, what does someone care about, right? If, for example, your platform is a place where people input their information and a really fancy graph comes out the other side, well, you don't have to build that whole thing out. You can literally build the front end to be able to get people to input their information. And as soon as they give you that information, you could go and for the first couple customers, you can create that thing yourself manually, and then send them an email saying, the results of your test are ready. Come and check it out. We've analyzed your data and have results for you. And literally just have a PDF that's sitting in behind a login screen, and it makes the customer think you've built out this entire thing, and you've been able to transact for your first time, and you've proven the model, and it's like, this is the approach that you should be taking. So now's the moment where I just want to congratulate you. I'm going to be taking a lot of questions. The point of me doing kind of a shorter presentation is that I also have a little present for you. I have a free course which breaks down each one of these steps, so step by step. So we jump into things like assumptions, customer discovery, how you can kind of build the first brand, build that smoke test, how you should go about building your MVP, all the way to how to create pitch decks and investor and prepare for investors, right? So you can check that out at the link below. It's just wearenocode.com/free course. I'll be able to put a link once I'm not presenting anymore in the chat. There's also a free toolkit that we give you with more than $1,500 of credits for some of these tools. And oftentimes we just say, startup journey is a complicated journey, and there are many routes that you can take. But oftentimes what we've realized is that when people just try to figure it out on their own, they end up very frustrated. And the reason for that is because there's so much you have to do. There's already so much uncertainty that if you're also working on the wrong things at the wrong time, or trying to piece together things all over the internet, you're going to find yourself with kind of a Frankenstein startup. And if you've invested a lot of time and energy into it, you can get quite frustrated. So it's in fact the main reason why we created a flagship program at WeAreNoCode. So this is a paid program. It's called the No Code Startup. And it's literally the #1 program for non-technical entrepreneurs, where we literally are only focused on upskilling individuals. And so I'll quickly tell you about this. I'm not going to jump into a whole pitch here, just tell you what we do ourselves. So we teach people how to build their MVPs with no-code tools. So we teach people a handful of no-code tools and then focus on supporting them as they're building out theirs. We then teach them how to attract users and turn those users by nurturing them into paying customers, and also to prepare entrepreneurs so that they can look serious once they go into the next step. So that might be looking for investment. It might be trying to get into an accelerator. It might be fully bootstrapping, which means not taking any external money and just sort of trying to grow the revenue yourself, keeping 100% of the equity and being your own boss. And so, yeah, what we've realized is that to be able to teach people all of these things, we have to really propose a full package, which includes weekly coaching. We have a large community of people. We have a step-by-step video curriculum that people can take at their own pace. We also provide networking and more than $300,000 of perks. So people usually save about $5,000 with that. And what we mainly focus on in the curriculum are some of the topics that I've mentioned earlier. So first of all, how can you go about customer discovery interviews? How should I write it? The questionnaire. How should I do outreach to be able to lock in meetings with my ideal customers? Then once we understand what the customers say they want, we're going to go ahead and build the brand and create all the content we need to be able to. So we teach all of those things as well. Then we start teaching you no-code tools. So how to build your first smoke test with no-code. Also how to attach tracking and analytics, understand how people are interacting with this first experience and how we can improve it to increase conversion. Then we teach you some tricks on how to get your, so in early stage startups, we talk about sales and marketing. We're really talking about first 100 customers. So it's a methodology that's slightly different that sets you up well for when you're going to then scale your marketing strategy. But it's all about both getting deep feedback from customers and being able to acquire them without spending a huge amount of money. We then jump into different tracks for building MVPs and support people because depending on what you're building, you're going to want a different tool set. And so we essentially assist people with video chat to be able, so they have their own private channel, and we teach them how to build them, and we send them videos back as they're building. So it's really about teaching people to become technical enough to get things off the ground, but you don't have to be your own CTO if you don't want to. That's another thing that I really try to focus on. And then after that, once you have revenue, great. Let's talk about pitch decks, fundraising, all of that. But our main focus is just teaching people a repeatable framework. Like, how can you launch businesses in the 22nd century, right? Wait, 21st, 22nd? Yeah. And the idea is that if we teach people the framework and give them the hard skills to be able to do that, it's only a matter of time, right? You can launch one startup, you can launch several startups. So our main goal has always been, like, instead of building something for people and giving it to them, which is most likely not going to align with the market demand, is to teach people how to become founders of the future. So for us, what that means, it's a person who's able to quickly identify and fine-tune opportunities, right? Because opportunities come in these windows of opportunities, which is the reason why the term comes up, where there are dynamics happening that suddenly creates an opportunity that you want to take advantage of in a relatively short amount of time. And now that every sort of business requires software, well, it's important to have some knowledge of how to build as well, which brings us to the next step, which is the ability to just build products online these days is so important. And you don't have to build complex things. And you also don't have to become your CTO. I want to repeat that. It's just becoming more and more difficult to justify that we are entrepreneurs if we do not have digital skills in the digital era. The last thing that we classify is an individual who's able to iterate and turn users into paying customers, but without all the stigma that goes around sales about having to be a closer or something like that. It's just about putting the right opportunity in front of the right person who has a problem and is willing to pay for the value that you're delivering to them. So you don't have to be an aggressive salesperson to be able to generate income for a solution. It's more about becoming a great scientist. And so my main goal is really just to help more people build businesses that they want to build, like to be able to give into the dreams that they have and feel like there is an opportunity for me. And even though I don't have experience, if I'm willing to become a beginner, if I'm willing to take that mentality of like, hey, I don't know entrepreneurship, I need to learn it. But what I've seen is that when people start engaging in the growth mindset, and then just learning hard skills versus, unfortunately, most of what entrepreneurship teaches us these days is the soft skills behind entrepreneurship. And I just find that most people find themselves blocked because, yes, you need to build something to be able to get things to market. So we're really passionate about this, and we've been doing this for 2.5 years now. I've trained more than 400 founders. And now I'm super excited to be able to, share my knowledge of no code with you, take all of your questions. Again, for the links, I don't know if some links have been posted in the chat already, but if there are any questions about this, I can get as nerdy or not as you'd like. So please feel free to ask any questions either in the chat. Christian, would be nice to see a survey of the biggest roadblocks that people are experiencing. Mine is mentorship coaching. Others might be direction, clear vision, procrastination mindset, or monetary challenges. I'm curious of people's challenges. So if anyone's on this call and they want to sort of drop in the chat what your specific challenge is, but Hazel, I'm happy to talk about the challenges that I've seen most people have who are non-technical, at least. And I guess technical people also have this problem. But usually there are two types of founders. There's the super techie founder who knows how to build everything and doesn't know how to bring anything to market. Always focused on overbuilding features, creating bloated products, and really stoked about the technology, but totally, like the customer is kind of an afterthought. We also have the highly motivated non-technical entrepreneur who is intelligent, driven, willing to put in the hours, and simply lacks the hard technical skills. So that's kind of frustrating because it's like it always comes to a point at which you have to build something. And oftentimes the first thing you build is going to be the first of many iterations of what your business ends up being. So technical skills is a clear one, like building that MVP. When you say that mentorship or coaching is your roadblock, what do you mean by that? Because that's usually a solution to I guess another problem, right? The problem might be I don't know where to start, or I don't know how to build product, or I'm having issues with analytics, or I'm not able to get people to pay for my product, or I don't know the right pricing to pay for that I should charge people for. But mentorship for me and coaching, like, had I built this program because 15 years ago I was non-technical, and I personally had to go through the hardships of hiring expensive developers, hiring cheap developers, also like trying to learn how to code, finding tech co-founders. And I've realized that there aren't really awesome solutions for any one of those. I need a mentor or coach that is willing to give input on my performance. Excellent. Well, yeah, you should absolutely surround yourself with people who have more experience than you to get ahead of the curve, because it's competitive to be an entrepreneur these days. Regardless, there's probably several people building every business at the same time. So that's pretty much exactly what we do in our program, is that we both. So this is our paid program. So just to be clear, the free course is already a really good way to get things off the ground and to understand some of these no-code tools and all that. But in our paid program, what we realized is that no one's building a company in an 8-week bootcamp. So 8-week boot camps are great to accelerate something, but oftentimes accelerators, they focus more on fundraising. So they're kind of helping you polish your deck, helping you pitch, fine tune that pitch deck, that presentation as well. And you can definitely do that. But we realized that people needed longer term support. And what that means is that they should be able to work well in advance in their own time. That's why we created the video curriculum. But also they need guidance and support. So the ability to at any point record a video and send that to us, and we send you back a video, is something that we've realized has been just very useful. And then meeting up once a week, and that's really it's a coaching session with about 10 to 15 other founders. And there it's really about just showing up for yourself and being accountable. And some weeks you come and you're bummed out. Why? Because, oh, this person you talked to doesn't like your idea, or you built something and there's an issue. And it's really just about making sure that we're all working on the right things. And it's very difficult when you're an entrepreneur, and this is from personal experience, to know what the next biggest priority is. And oftentimes, simply by focusing on the wrong priority, we end up stuck. And getting stuck is the difference between being able to continue to work on our startups or kind of wanting to give up. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is that people don't let themselves be beginners. It's like, if this is your first company, or if it's your first online company, like, embrace the fact that there's a lot that you need to learn, and that's okay. So the more that you accept that, the less hard you are on yourself, the more you start comparing yourself not to people ahead of you, but your previous self, the more you see progress, and the more progress you see, the more excited you are to keep working on it. And that's a human psychological thing that I think a lot of people disregard when it comes to building their startups. So I'm a huge, proponent of, like, when you're building a startup, you're learning about yourself, you're learning about business in parallel. And entrepreneurs looking to build startups should really be focused on acquiring hard skills, but also acquiring the proper mindset behind it, and just finding people who can help them with it. And yes, focus. Focus is everything. You just mentioned this, Hazel, but I mean, focus is, and I'm, the kind of person who also, has to deal with ADHD. So it's very easy to distract me from something. So, and I think a lot of people these days, between apps, between social media, between all these crazy things happening, the news, it's very difficult to stay focused. I have basic tricks where it's like, I have calendar. I basically have invites for each task that I'm doing today. I always turn off my notifications, just so that I can, for that 1 hour that I've dedicated to that one thing, I don't get a ping from, YouTube being like, hey, there's another cool video that just was released, which gives us, if nothing else, it distracts us from the task that we're doing. And so it's interesting. A lot of people work with checklists. I love checklists as well, but I've realized that committing to be able to focus for the amount of time that I've decided that I'll put in to a specific task on a specific day is probably the most important. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the presentation. But I'd love to, if you have any questions here, I'd love to talk about it, because there's a lot that can be done. Like no code is also like, think of no code tools, and this is there is a really broad number of tools, but think of them like the way that Excel and PowerPoint were for the previous generation. It was super important, right? Like these days, in a world where artificial intelligence and where automation is going to, where people are worried that it's going to take people's jobs. Um, what a lot of people don't realize is that these no-code tools literally give you the power to be the creative behind creating incredible software experiences, automating systems without learning how to code. So the narrative behind no code goes way beyond building products, building companies. It's this idea that as humans, we don't process as well as computers, right? And over the next couple of decades, we're going to start readapting to being the creatives again, and our ability to, to think on our feet, our ability to is going to be important. But we're going to essentially have to upskill to be able to leverage the technology that we now have to be able to do a lot of the boring stuff that we don't like already, right? Like repetitive tasks. You can automate a lot of repetitive tasks, right? And that's sort of the magic of this. It's just saying this is the future of work as well. One thing you mentioned, I have a comment here from Naomi. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. One thing you mentioned is the first 100 users. Going out to engage with that audience to help iterate through a service product. How can we filter through applicable feedback when some may be outliers? Excellent. So the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about the first 100 users is this idea that you want to, at first, regardless of what you're doing, you want to target a specific niche. So that kind of starts for me in the assumption stage, where it's like we come in and we have an idea for product and we have an idea of who would actually use that. But you really want to kind of segment those people into smaller groups of individuals. So let's say it's yoga instructors, right? We have software that can help yoga instructors be more effective. Well, there are going to be different profiles of yoga instructors. There are going to be different levels of technicality, which might make your product, you have to make it super, super simple, maybe limited in functionalities, or maybe people who are a bit more tech savvy who, would be able to, but at any given time, you want to kind of be able to categorize people. And this is because you need to make a choice between customers that you're going to service. You need to make a choice of who is your, what we call beachhead market, that's going to bring you, and I usually define the beachhead market as the first very small niche or segment that's going to get us to, let's say, $5,000 in revenue, 10,000, 100,000. It could be up to $1 million, but our ability to deliver a product that really fulfills the value for a specific individual in a specific situation is way more important than creating something that's kind of good at everything. And so, when we talk about getting first 100 users, there, you want to go after different users, but have those conversations, like actually go and so if it's pre-product and you're not selling yet, you want to really just understand what's happening in their life. And these people might be, so it's like, I would go and talk to people and like, tell me about about how you organize your business as a, I think I said a yoga instructor, right? Tell me about how you, do this right now. And then the person might run you through, well, I use Google Sheets for this. I use this software for that. I use this thing for this. I use this thing for, and you can start digging deeper into their lives. And, how can you have that conversation if they don't know what you're doing? Well, they will. You can just basically hit them up and say, hey, like, listen, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm trying to build a solution for people like you. And I'd love to have, your expertise. I was wondering if I could just have 5 minutes of your time. Usually I always put a very personal first line in that. But the reason for that is not because you need feedback as much as you need customers at this point. And you need to be able to classify those individuals into, is this person in that niche or is this person in this niche? And at some point you're going to find who that ideal customer profile is. And the reason why we need that is because there's specific benefits that we're going to want to talk about that are going to convince that person to join. There's a very specific outcome that person is looking for that someone in just a slightly different category might be not looking for. And then there's really just, I usually talk about just direct acquisition. So people say, yeah, paid ads is really good. I'll do limited paid ads sometimes if I'm testing out different markets with different messaging, if we're talking about a smoke test. But oftentimes I'm going to try to get, essentially create a list of people, like an outreach list of very specific people. So it starts with creating a list, right? That you're going to start tracking over time. So let's say that you're targeting, small, medium businesses, their marketing manager, right? Those are searches that you could do on LinkedIn. There's also other places that you could find that information. You can also, Twitter direct message is also a great way to do outreach to individuals. Some people talk about creating content. Now, I create content, a lot of it, but early on in, it's a long-term investment. And as an entrepreneur, you don't know if you're going to be around long-term. So it's better to get quicker feedback and to do direct sales, and then to be able to bring all your learnings into crafting a scalable strategy for your marketing efforts. And that's when we go from product market fit to product channel fit, which is about figuring out the best channel to deliver that. But to be able to really nail that channel, we need to understand all the small details around the, not only the benefits that people are looking to have, or the outcome that your customer is looking to pay for, but also for all these other things around that. So it can be more complex, but I'd say that you want to do a lot of things that are not scalable at first. Yes, so our program does offer that, where we teach about marketing and how to acquire customers. Absolutely. No code is, again, it just refers to tools. So it's just a term that's used for tools that don't require technical skills. So the No Code Startup, which is our program, does offer that. Some no code tools are well set up to help you with that, right? You could even consider a tool like, I don't know, that's where it becomes very blurry, because no code tools, like, you can consider Calendly a no code tool. You can use it without being technical. Oftentimes I kind of keep it to two different criteria. One of them is building software. The other one is automating systems. So those are really two things that classify no code tools for me. Automation, please. I love that. Yeah. I mean, automation, it's, again, the same thing. You got to do things manually before you automate them. Like, don't forget that building out a product is just about getting the value that you deliver to a customer, that you're able to deliver that in a more scalable way. But remember, people care about the value. They don't care about the product. They don't care about your features. They don't care about machine learning. Like, yes, machine learning can improve your product that gets better at doing the things that you need it to, but it absolutely shouldn't be the first thing that you focus on. And so there are lots of smart ways to go about proving your business model, proving demand, and generating revenue. And you're going to take all of those learnings, literally, even the exact words that individuals say back to you when you're maybe selling to them, or when you're understanding. Like, these are words that they connect to. So a great example is that when you do customer discovery, you're going to learn things that you're going to directly use in the language that you'll use on your website. That's going to be exactly the same use of words that you're going to use when you are on social media. Let's say if you have paid ads running, which is the same thing that you're going to have on your sales letter. So it all starts with a promise, basically. A promise of a transformation or benefits. And then it's about, like, for entrepreneurs like yourselves, it's really just about getting smarter about the way that you approach entrepreneurship. And knowing what you don't know is a huge advantage in entrepreneurship, because as soon as you know that, it doesn't mean you have to do it all yourself. It just means that now you know that this is going to be something at some point, and you can kind of put it into your roadmap. I can tell you from experience, it takes a lot longer to learn entrepreneurship when you're just doing it by trial and error, which is why I always kind of tell people, like, hey, like, you should really try to, If there's a specific thing you're trying to learn, like buy a cheap course online, or like, find a mentorship program, or, be involved with your local, innovation hub. There's a lot of things that people can do. No code is just a really big opportunity that's coming right now, because it's a new way for most individuals to be able to build things out. And so if I leave you with one thing today, it's that you can build yourself as a non-technical person with zero experience. If you know how to use, basic social media and things like that, like, you will be able to learn these skills. That entrepreneurship is a learned skill, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, like anything. And so I think I'll finish with kind of a story that I don't know if it will relate directly to this, but I always hear people saying, like, I wish I had, and this is because, so I play some instruments, and every time someone finds out, they're like, that's awesome. Like, I wish I had learned an instrument. And then you kind of ask them, like, well, how old are you? And they're like, oh, I'm 55, I'm 60. It's like, I'm 40, I'm 30. It's like, what people don't realize is that, A, you don't have to be the best in the world to begin. Two, if you just put a little bit of effort over time, you're going to be able to learn it enough to be able to get the benefits from it that you're looking for. And I think in our society, we're always kind of like, we're either the best or we're nothing. And I think that that's something that has to be challenged. We have to really change the mentality that we have. We have to start talking about the many, many $1 to $5 million exits that people are having that change people's lives entirely. With no code, you can build 1 or 2 person businesses. You can literally build an entire business as a solo, non-technical entrepreneur. It's, important to understand this in the day and age where we're at the forefront of the Great Resignation, right? And so I think there's a lot of powerful things to take from this, but the most important thing I'd say is that you can learn this stuff. And being scared, like facing some of the things we're scared of, and I was terrified of technology, like tech. Like, I didn't want to build things. I thought it was not for me. I thought I had to find someone else to always help me do so. And if you're able to do that, that's awesome. But if you want to be an entrepreneur in the long term, and you know that's your longer term vision to want to build a business or be your own boss, like, start investing in the things that will get you there over the longer term. And there are way fewer people in the long game. Like, everyone needs results today. And if it doesn't hit today, they're stopping, right? It's like the marshmallow test is real, and so if there's one thing that I would encourage people to do is, like, invest in the long game, like, and invest in yourself, like, literally. Your time is your money, and your money is your money. And it's always going to be a trade-off. So make sure that you're learning the right things so you can empower yourself in the long term, and then wait for that amazing idea. Maybe the first idea you come up with, it's terrible. I can tell you, because I've literally built lots of terrible ideas in my life. And it's and that's how you become better. And yeah, there's also that awesome study. It's like, they take 2 sample groups, like, one builds 100 vases in 1 a day, and the other one builds 1 vase in 100 days. And the people who built 100 vases obviously were way better at building vases. So it's just like, why are we kidding ourselves? Like, let's invest in these things, and they are doable. Like, I definitely was someone who from a young age was a risk taker, but I don't have the story of, like, this kid selling candies to his friend at schools and trying to hustle. Like, everyone has a different path, but the one thing in common is that, like, those skills and learning them, and not feeling intimidated because the tech world has all this jargon, or entrepreneurship, or investors are going to talk about their KPIs or MOM, or MOM growth, or this is stuff that anyone can learn. They just have to learn it, and to put in the effort, and then to over time you'll hit one opportunity and it'll work. And it might be after 2 failures, but the ability to do that in just a couple months for like $1,000 is way better than to take 3 years and all of your savings. Because when that happens, and that's what the majority of people are doing today, I can tell you, people lose faith in themselves, and they give up on their entrepreneurship dreams. And that's the saddest thing about all this. That's why I built the company, and that's why I'm always excited to speak at conferences like these, because there are people who are excited and have the motivation. And if you have that, that's enough. That's enough. Doesn't matter where you're starting. That's enough. So anyway, there you go. That was it. I hope that everyone had enjoyed the presentation, and happy to answer any questions. Again, I'll drop the links to the free course here on the right, and to the free toolkit as well. So you'll be able to find that toolkit within the free course as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something, and I hope that you can avoid making a lot of the same mistakes that thousands of entrepreneurs before us have made.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christian. And it is funny how much easier it is today. I don't think most people know. It's so much easier than it has ever been. Like, please take advantage of this time. It's so unique. It's so much easier. So thank you, Christian, for showing us all of that. And the toolkit and the resources are awesome. And please take advantage of those because, again, like I said, this time is very unique. I don't think in my whole 30-year career I've seen as much help in the coding arena as is coming on board right now.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like, this is going to be something that everyone learns like, it's already, I'm seeing it already. I'm being contacted so that we can get it into like universities, into like, this is just like the future, regardless of whether people want to learn it or not. Like, it's kind of like the opportunity of learning how to code when I miss the bus, except it takes, instead of taking 6 years to become an excellent coder, it's going to take you 6 months max to be an incredible software builder with no code. And you can already build things in like 10 days, a week. That's another thing that I constantly talk about. It's like, hey, why start in the hardest one ever? Or why try to build machine learning algorithms like when you're beginning? It's like, and
Yeah,
specifically
you
if
don't
you're
have to
looking to
do
build
that.
a business. Yeah, you don't need to build complex.
We're building low code versions of that. So just stay tuned.